Should you buy a Squier? That's not what this is, but we've got one right here. I'm going to unbox this Squier Telecaster, even though I own an American-made Fender guitar. And here's why. Now, you've probably searched what is the best cheap electric guitar, and this one probably comes up a lot. This is a Squier Affinity Telecaster. So while I'm unboxing this, I'll also explain to you why I'm buying a cheap electric guitar, even though I already own a more expensive electric guitar. Now, the first thing is that I am just kind of curious, and it's quite motivating to have a new product when you're getting started in something new. Like if you're trying to get back into piano, it's a little bit more motivating to like buy yourself the latest synthesizer that's on the market. The reason I bought this cheaper guitar is that instead of buying myself a really expensive one, which would have given me the full satisfaction of making progress, I wanted to get myself a cheap electric guitar so that I would still want the expensive one. Actually quite a big box. I just have to stand up to get it out here. It comes in a gig bag. The theory is by buying this cheap instrument, I'll motivate myself to practice enough that I can eventually go and buy a more expensive one. But then again, maybe this will just be good enough. This is the Squier Affinity Telecaster. It's still in packaging, but I'm actually quite excited about this. There is actually a benefit to buying a cheaper guitar in terms of weight, so I'm kind of excited about how light it's going to be. Here it is, the Fender Affinity Telecaster in, I think the color was Olympic white. That is actually really exciting. I think if I were a kid just getting into guitar and someone handed me this, I mean, just the fact that it's brand new means that it's nice and shiny. I think I would be super excited to receive this. Well, the thing is, I already own an American Stratocaster, which by all, in terms of all theories, should already be so good that I don't need to buy a cheaper instrument. But I'm excited about this. I'm really excited about this. And just because I know how stressful it is to watch a guitar review where the person talks about it but doesn't actually play it, let's actually hear some acoustic sound from this thing. Well, let's tune it up. At the base of the Squier range, they've got like the Debut, the Sonic, and the Affinity. So the Affinity is actually the more expensive of the cheap guitars. So the current going price for this is $329. Not the cheapest one they make, but definitely cheaper than the Mexican or the American made ones that they also do, and the Indonesian ones as well. Those are the ones that say Fender on the headstock. But in Japan, because of the exchange rate, and for whatever reason, there's also just a discount, I got this for $208. So I figured instead of buying a Debut collection or a Sonic, which are almost that price anyway, I'll just buy the slightly more expensive Affinity for still almost the same price. Now, the weight of these guitars does vary by instrument, but as you can see, it's a very slim Telecaster. As far as I've been told, this is actually a bit slimmer than a standard Telecaster, which might be actually kind of a good thing if you're just getting into guitar. Plus, it has this belly carve here. The thing is, I do want to practice on this a lot, which means I sit on the sofa, leaning back like this with the guitar digging into my chest. And I'm used to having a belly cut on my guitar because, for the past 20 years, I've had this American Strat, which has a belly carve. That's just kind of the way that Stratocasters are designed. Telecasters traditionally don't have a belly carve, but honestly, I think if you're just getting into guitar, you probably want one that does have it. I mean, it's up to you how traditional you want to be. Now, we can talk about whether you want to buy a Telecaster or a Stratocaster in the future, but what I really want to see is just how does it feel to play? Because actually, the main thing I want to do with this guitar is improve and actually learn guitar. I've been playing guitar for 20 years and I'm still a beginner, and I think there are a lot of people who kind of associate with that state of being. So I'm going back through and I'm learning my scales. It's like, this is a G, A, B, C, or C sharp. I can actually kind of figure out what note I'm playing. The thing is, it still takes me time. It's just like, play a C sharp. Okay, hold on, this is C, and that's a C sharp. So it still takes me time to get there. It looks really great. Like for $329, even if you're paying full price, I think you should be very happy with this. I haven't had a very good look at it, but just first impressions getting it out of the box. It's shiny, it's brand new. Even the Squier logo, if you don't care if it says Fender or Squier, it looks cool actually. The font that it's used, it doesn't look cheap or anything. They want you to buy more expensive instruments, but that doesn't mean that they're cheaping out on the less expensive instruments, I should say. Now, the thing about buying a cheap electric guitar is that you still want it to sound good, so the electronics in here do matter. And secondly, you want it to feel good. So a lot of the things that would happen with old Squiers, we're talking 20 years ago, I would pick up a Squier that was hanging around in a music classroom or something, and I'd be like, wow, this just does not feel good. You'd run your fingers down it, it'd be like, wow, these edges are really sharp. This does not feel any different to me than the Ibanez that I had, which is also not a very expensive guitar, but I have an Ibanez like DTX Destroyer guitar. It was easy to put on my lap, and also it was a stop tail. If you're thinking of buying a new electric guitar, one of the pitfalls of buying a Strat is that it has a tremolo on it. And usually they're set up floating, which means that every time one string breaks, all the other strings go out of tune. With a Telecaster, it's got a stop tail. That doesn't just mean that when the strings break, they're in tune. It also means that you can do this. You can play another string and bend it, and it doesn't affect the tuning of the other string. So let's go in order. Buying a cheap guitar, what am I worried about? Sound and feel. We'll do the sound first. As far as I can tell, you can't complain with that. What's the fastest thing I can play that sounds really impressive? I think it sounds pretty good so far. Let's go to a slightly cleaner sound. I will say that the tone control doesn't feel like it does a whole lot, like it's missing top end or something. Just kind of screwed up that at the end. It doesn't feel like I get a lot of top end on this neck pickup. But also, to be fair, the neck pickup isn't exactly what people write home about on the Telecaster anyway. They usually just put it in the bridge position. On that note, let's stay in the bridge position and see how that sounds. I definitely feel like there's just some top end missing from this. Could just be that I haven't used this Pod HD 500 for a long time and I forgot what the built-in sounds were like. Sounds good to me. The next thing I want to know is, does it feel all right? And like I mentioned, my Ibanez feels identical to this, you know. It doesn't have rolled fret edges. This does not feel bad. The other thing is that people say, like, when you're running your fingers up and down the neck, does it feel like it's cutting them open? The thing is, when you run your fingers up and down the neck, you don't put your hand right on the edges of the frets and slide along them. So yes, it does matter that you have a comfortable fretboard that doesn't cut your hand open, but I think when you watch YouTube guitar reviews, you overestimate how often you're going to be rubbing your hand along the actual edge of it. Honestly, I am very happy with this instrument. It feels good, and honestly, it doesn't feel like it has very flat frets. One of the issues with Squier instruments when I was growing up was that every time you picked one up, it felt like those frets were drawn on with a pencil. It's like they weren't actually jutting out from the fretboard, but of course this is fret wire and it's actually bumped up. So I'm not necessarily saying that giant frets are always better, but there is a balance. If they're too low, it just makes bending things really difficult. So I'll just finish up with more of a discussion as to why I purchased this instrument. In my head, I've been thinking about buying a Telecaster, so a guitar that looks like this and has the word Fender on the headstock. And not just saying Fender, like I always wanted one that was made in America. From what I've seen, like I've owned a PRS SE, I own an Ibanez, I've owned guitars that weren't made in America. And honestly, even the Highway 1 Strat, the weird thing about this guitar, even though it's made in America, this instrument actually has parts from Mexico. So as far as I'm aware, they would like get parts out of a bin in Mexico, ship them up to California, and then they would assemble it there. I still loved the guitar, and I had a great time with it for the past 20 years, and I'll continue to keep playing it. But in the back of my mind, I always wanted a Telecaster as well. I wasn't always really into country music or anything, so it wasn't really important to me to have that, you know, rocky country bridge Telecaster tone, which is so famous for. I just loved the shape of it. I think also maybe just the simplicity of it. I liked the idea that the guitar is not trying to do anything except give you the tools that you need to make some music. So that's the reason I ended up getting a Telecaster at all, was that I really wanted an American Telecaster. But like I mentioned at the start of the video, if I had bought an expensive American Telecaster, this is the risk if you're an adult learning a guitar, is that you probably do have the money because you have a job. When you're a kid and you don't have the money, you're forced to take whatever you've got and just learn it. When you're an adult learning guitar, you're like, I'll just buy an expensive guitar because, you know, I want it to last a long time. There are plenty of good reasons to buy an expensive guitar, but it does make learning harder. I was just happy knowing that I owned an American Stratocaster, enough that I didn't really put the work into practicing it. I guess I was also busy with other stuff, so I don't need to make too many excuses for myself. The risk for me was that I thought I was going to buy a nice, expensive American Telecaster, and then I wouldn't have any reason to keep getting better. Obviously, the desire to write my own music or to play in a jazz ensemble, like those are obviously goals in my mind, but those goals themselves are not like motivation. For me, definitely motivation is hooked up with dopamine and reward systems, and buying something is one of the easiest ways that you can reward yourself, so why do it at the start? This is not like a mindfulness video. I'm not trying to tell you like you should always delay your gratification, but on this particular occasion, I wanted to avoid the risk of not learning. Because if I gratified myself with an expensive guitar at the start, I know that I'm not going to practice on it. So the exciting part for me is, one, finding out whether Squier Telecasters are actually pretty good these days. But secondly, I got really excited by the idea of taking myself down to a cheaper instrument level so that I could use the idea of buying an expensive instrument as motivation to keep practicing. When I reach a certain level, and I haven't decided exactly what that level will be, I will go out and I will buy myself an expensive American Telecaster. But then again, maybe I'll discover I don't need it. I think that's quite an exciting prospect. The idea that maybe I'll fall in love with just the shape and size and weight of this guitar, and maybe I'll just put expensive electronics in it. For now, at the moment, I think it's probably the sound of the pickups. I think that's the only thing that's kind of holding it back at the moment. In terms of the feel, I feel absolutely no issue learning guitar on this. It feels good. The action is low. Sometimes when you have cheap instruments, I don't think this happens very often anymore, but like the strings are actually very high off. So in order to fret the instrument, you have to like push the string really far down, which obviously hurts your fingers, especially when you're new at guitar, and you'll feel like those thin metal strings are like cutting into your fingers. The action on this is really low. It takes basically no effort whatsoever to push these strings down. Yeah, you do hear a little bit of buzz on yeah, I'm hearing a little bit of buzz, so presumably maybe the nut is not as high as it could be, but as a result, it means that the action is really, really low. In just regular playing though, listen up, this is the new beginning to my journey. After 20 years of pretending to play guitar, I'm actually learning my scales. I'm going to be actually learning how to improvise. I'm going to be learning exactly where the notes are on the fretboard. There's so much I want to learn and get seriously into with guitar. And this Squier Affinity Telecaster, I'm so excited about it because it feels like I'm going back to basics and the guitar is also going back to basics. When I finally reach a point that I'm satisfied with my progress, I will then buy a guitar that feels appropriate rather than buying I don't want to buy progress. And I recommend to you to do the same. If you're in the position that I've been in, and I think a lot of people are, don't buy an expensive guitar until you kind of like deserve it. Because the risk is that you'll feel so satisfied with the progress that you've made just by buying progress that you might not make real progress. And it just feels awful when years later you realize I spent a lot of money and I cheated myself out of actually making progress, which would have been much more satisfying at this point. But now here I am years later and I still can't play. And that sucks. I don't want to be in that position again. Have you ever been in this position where you bought something really nice and in a way you felt a lot of progress at that time, but in the end it didn't translate into real progress? I really want to hear about it in the comments below, and also be specific. What guitar did you buy? And subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this. Anyway, I've been Nihongo Gamer. This is my music channel, which still doesn't have a name, but it will have a name in the future. I'll change the name to something. At the moment it's like Nihongo Gamer Music. That's all for now. I'll see you next time.